Hello and welcome to The Football Word. I am Doug Kide, this is Zach Cox, and we have a lot to talk about on this week's episode. For once, it's been kind of a semi-slow offseason, but the 2017 NFL Draft has come and gone, and we have 4 draft picks to discuss, many undrafted free agent signings, so let's get into it right away with Derrick Rivers. You did a film review on Derrick Rivers.
I did. Posted this morning.
What did you find out about the Patriots' 83rd overall selection, the pass rusher?
Well, I was very impressed with what I saw from Derrick Rivers' film. Obviously, he's an FCS guy. He played at Youngstown State, so the level of competition is not what you would see in a Power 5 conference or anything like that, which I think definitely played into why he wasn't picked until the latter half of the 3rd round. I've heard some draft evaluators say that if he was playing at a big-time school, he would have gone maybe even in the 1st round, and I kind of agree with that. I mean, he's incredibly athletic. He was in the top 3 or 4 in his position group in pretty much everything at the scouting combine, and you just see him kind of ragdoll these FCS tackles. I mean, he's very quick. He's got a very he was very adept at getting around guys, and then the guys who couldn't get around, he was able to just kind of bulldoze right through some guys. He does have a little bit of a limited skill set right now, I think. His bag of tricks, you might say, is a little bit probably could use expanding at the NFL level. Probably has to put on some weight too. But from what I saw, he was a very solid pick, especially as far down in the draft as he went.
Yeah. The Bleacher Report's Justice Moscata did a really nice breakdown of Derrick Rivers, and he kind of showcased some of the things about him, like beyond what you saw in your film review. Or part of what you saw in your film review as well. Doesn't have a lot of counter moves, not a lot of spin moves that you see him doing. Just kind of does a rip every once in a while. Not a lot of, if a tackle takes him too far outside, Rivers usually doesn't go back inside to try to get to the quarterback. He just trusts his athleticism to keep working that outside, and usually it works for him. He got to the quarterback, 14 times this season? 14 sacks. I think he had 12 or 14 sacks as a sophomore too.
Yeah, so 9 as a junior.
Very productive.
Youngstown State's all-time leading sack artist. So I mean, take for that what you will. It is Youngstown State. But.
And that was coming off the left side, which usually isn't the side that you get a lot of those sacks because it's not the quarterback's blind side, so that makes it even more impressive. But no, like you said, fantastic athlete, and it really does show on tape with him. You highlighted one play where he was working to the outside, then he really stopped on a dime, cut, and went straight back to sack the quarterback. What was that, Illinois State?
Illinois State, yeah.
And that shows that 6.94 second 3-cone. This isn't just testing numbers. This isn't just practice. He has that athleticism.
No, he definitely does. I mean, he did look a little bit raw in some instances. I think he has to work on setting the edge a little bit. There were far too many plays where I saw where he was able, either the tackle or the tight end or whoever it was able to kind of seal him off, and the running back or quarterback was able to get around the edge. That's something he needs to work on. Again, he probably needs to add some weight. He's only 248 pounds, which is by far the smallest defensive end on the Patriots roster right now. I believe Trey Flowers is up around 275, and even he's not a huge guy himself. So definitely going to have to put on some weight, put on some strength. But I mean, he's already a pretty strong guy as it is. I believe he was 4th among all D linemen.
30 bench reps.
30 bench reps, and that's including D tackles too. So definitely already a strong guy, needs to add some mass, but I think Patriots fans are really going to like what they see from this kid. Yeah,
the Patriots really stress setting the edge, so that's something he'll certainly have to work on. But like you said, once he gets up to that 260-pound range, that will be quite a bit easier for him. I think that one thing that is kind of interesting is the possibility that the Patriots might even play him at linebacker a little bit, and that's something that Mike Mayock said after he was drafted. And right now I expect him to be an edge rusher. I expect him to be a defensive end, but he does have the size and the athleticism that the Patriots usually like to see out of their linebackers. He could be that Jamie Collins type if they really want to work on him as a project. He doesn't have the history that Collins had. Collins played a lot of safety at Southern Miss in high school. Rivers has mostly played defensive end his entire career. He played a little bit of linebacker as a junior, so I'm not sure if it's worth experimenting with him in that way, but he's the type of player, he's the type of athlete who could potentially do that. And I saw at least one snap where he was dropped into coverage, and he certainly looked comfortable covering a running back.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. He was basically the snaps I watched. I watched 3 or 4 games plus the Senior Bowl. He was probably down in a 3-point stance 80% of the time, 90% of the time. But he did have some stand-up defensive end, outside linebacker type, and he did drop back in coverage a couple times. He's an athletic guy. I mean, he's got the speed to cover these guys in running backs in the flats, tight ends, things of those nature. Obviously, there's not much of a sample size to judge whether he could really do that at the NFL level, but it seems like he has the tools.
Yeah, Patriots with their pass rushers like guys who can either rush the passer or occasionally drop back into coverage, or guys who can rush the passer and occasionally kick inside to play defensive tackle in sub roles. I think that Rivers is more of the former. He will see more time dropping back into coverage than he will kicking it inside. That leads us to another player the Patriots drafted. We're not going in order of draft picks. We'll go by position. Dietrich Wise. Dietrich. That's a tough name
like
to
ostrich.
pronounce. Yes. He was the Patriots' what was it, 4th round draft pick?
Yes, I believe it was 131.
Yep, out of Arkansas, same place that they got Trey Flowers. And I see him being kind of a similar player. He's long like Trey Flowers. He's quite a bit taller, but their arm length is similar. And I think that he is that type of player who can kick inside. He can play some 3-technique defensive tackle. He can play some 5-technique defensive end. He's 6'5", 274 pounds already. So if they wanted him to gain some weight, he could potentially be, I don't know if he could be a Richard Seymour type, but he could play that 5-technique defensive end and hold his ground there against the run. Didn't get a ton of snaps at Arkansas, so we'll see how that translates to the NFL level. But when he was in there, he was extremely productive, got a lot of hurries, got a lot of sacks, got a lot of pressures. So I thought that was another good pick for them.
Yeah, I mean, obviously they need help in the pass rushing role.
Yeah.
That was really the thing that we've been talking about all offseason. That's the only real need on this team entering this draft, and they picked up 2 pretty solid guys. I mean, I haven't dove into Wise's tape too much, but I have heard he had a very good performance at the East-West Shrine Bowl, which is kind of the secondary Senior Bowl, a slight step down. But I heard he performed very well there. And yeah, he's definitely, I think, more of the latter, if we were talking about that before. I don't think you're going to see him drop back into coverage or anything, but he is a little bit bigger. He's very similar physically to Chandler Jones, who obviously started for the Patriots for a couple of years before he's now on with the Arizona Cardinals. I don't know if he would play a similar role, but it is kind of interesting to see that their measurables and their combine numbers are almost identical.
They are, yeah. Wise is a little bit slower.
Yeah, he's about 10 pounds heavier,
ran
too.
Ran a 4.92, but yeah, he's heavier. Yeah. And that was one of the things with Chandler Jones is that I never got the sense that they completely found his perfect role.
Yeah.
Obviously, he was a double-digit sack guy, so that's kind of strange to say, but he was a 4-3 defensive end. And the Patriots like guys, like I said earlier, who can drop back into coverage or can kick inside. The Patriots tried both with Jones. They tried to drop him back into coverage, and he was just always a little bit too stiff for that.
A little awkward, yeah.
He was never quite heavy enough to play that inside 3-technique or 5-technique role. Wise already 274 pounds, so I don't think that will be quite as much of an issue with him. I think that he's a guy who has a more set role in the Patriots defense than Jones ever did, and obviously he won't play as much of a role. He probably won't be a double-digit sack guy, but he's certainly a nice piece to have in there as a rotational player.
Yeah, I would agree, and obviously he doesn't have doesn't come in with the pedigree that Chandler Jones did as a first-round pick. Wise coming out in the 4th round. Obviously, all of the guys that the Patriots drafted this year, they're not perfect prospects, or they wouldn't have been available 80, 90, 100 picks into the draft. But yeah, he's another guy that I think he's got some promise.
Let's get into Antonio Garcia real quick. He was the Patriots' first offensive tackle, 85th overall pick. I think that this is a guy that you look at who could potentially be the future left tackle. I don't think anyone really knows what Nate Solder is going to do after this season. I don't know if the Patriots will re-sign him, so they needed to bring in some offensive tackle depth, and Garcia certainly fills that. One thing that's kind of interesting about Garcia, who is a great athlete, like the Patriots typically look for out of their offensive tackles, very tall at 6'6", not the longest prospect. So he could be a guy who the Patriots could have as a swing tackle, but also potentially kick inside and at least experiment with him playing a little bit of guard at some points.
Yeah, it's interesting because you usually see these tall, underweight tackle prospects are usually they do have the very, very long arms.
Yeah.
He doesn't really have that, and it's interesting to look at him. You see pictures of him, he doesn't look like a tackle. He looks like a defensive end almost.
Yeah.
And so yeah, he's definitely going to have to put on some weight. We were talking to him on the conference call, and he's like, yeah, I'm comfortable playing anywhere between 300 and 315. Yeah. We heard that last year at Troy, he was playing down in like the 270s, 280s, which is tiny for an NFL tackle. I mean, right now, if he stays at the current weight he's at, I believe he was 308 at the combine. He would be the second smallest offensive lineman on the Patriots roster behind David Andrews, who's a center.
And he's a center who's like 6'2".
Yeah, he's about 5 inches shorter than Garcia. So I think that's going to have to be a part of his game. He's a very quick guy, very ex-basketball player, very good athlete. But yeah, I think he has a chance of getting manhandled by some of these pass rushers if he doesn't put on some mass, some weight there. But that's the case with a lot of prospects, and I think he's in a good spot in that the Patriots tackle rotation and their line as a whole is pretty set. They bring back everybody from last year. Yeah. Everybody of consequence is back. So I don't think he's going to be. They'll have plenty of time to bring him along. Even he might not even be the. I think we're looking at Nate Solder and Marcus Cannon obviously as the starters again, and then Cameron Fleming, the third tackle, is still there. So if neither of these rookies prove that they're kind of ready to play in that role, then they can keep around Fleming and use these guys as sort of developmental pieces.
Yeah, Adrian Waddle was the Patriots' fourth tackle last year, and he basically didn't play.
I think he played like one snap.
Yeah, whoever the Patriots' fourth offensive tackle is probably won't play very much. The other offensive tackle they drafted in the 6th round was Conor McDermott out of UCLA. Very similar player to Garcia, actually. A little bit taller. He's 6'8", so he's Nate Solder's size. Moves well, has longer arms than Garcia. He's a guy that I can't really see playing guard, but could probably play either left tackle or right tackle in the NFL. Similar to Garcia, wasn't the greatest run blocker in college, but he was a great pass protector. Garcia didn't allow a single sack during his senior season. I think McDermott only allowed 1 or 2, and those came in week 1 basically against Myles Garrett, who was the #1 overall pick. So McDermott was a guy who, heading into last season, some draft analysts were projecting could be a first-round pick. Yeah. This is a guy that the Patriots got in the 6th round, so I think there's a lot of upside there. I don't know if he'll make the roster because I don't know if the team wants to keep around 5 offensive tackles. I'd lean towards yes, though, just to keep him around. You don't want to lose that guy to a team on waivers, and he has the potential to be a starting left tackle if the Patriots can build him up a little bit.
Yeah, it was a little unfortunate for him that I remember when the Patriots drafted him, I was like, I've heard this name before. Where's this guy? I was like, oh, this is the guy who got destroyed by Myles Garrett in week 1. And that's really kind of because that was Myles. I mean, even going into this year, everybody knew Myles Garrett was probably the best prospect in college football. But that's the game that everybody was like, oh my God, this playing against UCLA is a pretty good program. He just destroyed Conor McDermott. The rest of the season, he was actually pretty solid. He didn't have a great Senior Bowl. He jumped off sides once, got burnt by coincidentally by
Derrick Rivers.
Derrick Rivers, yes. So yeah, low round pick. He still hasn't really even played tackle for all that long. He was a stud basketball player back in high school. Mr. Tennessee, played tight end in high school. I think he said he was like 230 pounds. He's put on 70 pounds since then. He didn't even start playing offensive line until he got to UCLA. So he's still a bit of a work in progress, as you would expect from somebody who has these physical tools, but is so far down in the draft. Also a guy who could probably gonna have to put on a little bit of weight, but yeah, he's a project, but if he definitely has potential. I would say that.
Yeah, it's tough to find offensive tackles in the NFL draft. So you
especially this year's class wasn't that great anyway. So
yeah, sometimes you have to take these raw guys in the 6th round and kind of hope to mold them. But Nate Solder was another guy who came into college. He was about 225 pounds, and he's up to 315, 320. He didn't really have too much of a problem putting on that weight at the NFL level and becoming a quality left tackle. So that does it for the Patriots draft class. Really quick, let's just. Jimmy Garoppolo and Malcolm Butler are still here. I don't know how much there is left to say about it at this point. It seemed getting down to the draft that it was unlikely that those guys would get moved. They didn't. Patriots only used 4 draft picks. So I don't know. It makes the Patriots better in 2017. I don't know if it makes them better in 2018 and beyond. But for at least this season, they're certainly the Super Bowl favorites again.
Yeah, that's a conversation that I'm sure we'll be having again next February, next March. But yeah, for now, we knew coming in that they would be, unless they could trade one of those players for, I don't know, some player that could help them this season. That probably wasn't going to happen. They're a better team with both of those players still on their roster. So both of them are still around. They're a better team. They're the unquestioned Super Bowl favorites, I have to say.
Absolutely. Patriots also signed 18 undrafted free agents. You can go to NESN.com to see the full list. I broke them down yesterday, giving all their measurables, giving some of their deeper stats. Who's one guy that you will be paying close attention to, not only this spring in OTAs and minicamp, but also during training camp in the preseason?
Well, I think there's kind of 2 headliners, and one of them's got to be Harvey Lange. We've heard, for a guy who didn't even end up getting drafted, we've heard his name for a long time. Bill Belichick reportedly loves this guy. There was a report that he said he looked like a first-round pick last year. I don't know how much I believe that, but the Patriots have shown really great interest in this guy ever since, going through the entire draft process, even back to last year. They don't have their linebacker rotation isn't super set. They obviously have Dante Hightower, who's one of the best in the league. But behind him, Shea McClellan, Kyle Van Noy, Landon Roberts, all good players, but I don't think any of them are lock starters or even really lock roster guys. I think they'll all make the team, but I can definitely see Lange sneaking in there.
Yeah, I like Lange a lot. The other guy,
is it Lange or Lange?
I think it's Lange. It
Lange.
might be
All right,
Lange.
we'll go with Lange.
I wanted to say Lange just so that we covered all our bases. Maybe
it.
Lange.
I like it.
Yeah, I think the other guy that you were kind of referring to was Austin Carr,
Yep.
maybe the wide receiver out of Northwestern. He has, lower odds to make the roster just because the Patriots are so stacked at wide receiver. But I mean, he certainly looks like that Patriots slot receiver
Incredibly
type.
productive at Northwestern.
Insanely productive, 90 catches, over 1,200 yards, 12 touchdowns. He was actually a deep threat with Northwestern too. He's got some decent athleticism, ran a 6.7 3-cone. So he's a guy that, maybe practice squad, maybe if there's an injury during camp, he could crack the roster, but he could be a guy who the Patriots will like, years from now. Just going through this list real quick, I think Jacob Hollister, the tight end out of Wyoming, also has a decent shot of cracking the roster if he could beat out James O'Shaughnessy for a roster spot. It's going to be tough for those offensive linemen to make the roster. But the other guy that I pay attention to, or will tell you to pay attention to a little bit, is just the safety Jason Thompson.
Yep.
Didn't play a lot of safety at Utah. He was a quarterback to start his career at Wyoming, but he could be that future Matthew Slater type. He was a special teams captain as a senior at Utah. He's an insane athlete. He's the type of guy that, if the Patriots want to keep around an extra special teamer, he would be that guy, and he was extremely productive on special teams for Utah for the last few years. And he's got all the measurables, all the, everything the Patriots usually look for out of a special teams guy.
Yeah, I was looking at your 90-man roster projection, very, or 53-man roster projection rather, very, very early. Obviously, we still have a long ways to go. But you were saying that there could be some significant turnover on special teams this year, depending on because there was a lot of special teams only, kind of Jordan Richards type guys who are fringe roster guys that could get pushed out by some of these. Brandon Bolden.
Marquise Mingo's gone.
Yep. Yeah. And storyline-wise, I'm interested to see the both of the Hollisters in camp this year. The Patriots signed undrafted free agent twin brothers, Jacob and Cody Hollister. I think the tight end, Jacob is the tight end.
Jacob's the tight end.
I'm going to confuse the hell out of this, and this is going to be bad in camp.
Yeah.
But yeah, he definitely has a better chance of making the roster just with how deep the wide receiver core is.
Definitely.
But we'll get some good stories out of it at least.
Last two mentions real quick. David Jones, the safety out of Richmond, had 9 interceptions in 2015. Great athlete, could be a special team guy. Other guy, Kenny Moore out of Valdosta State. Great athlete, very undersized at 5'9", 190. So a lot of intriguing prospects there in the undrafted
A lot of defensive
list.
backs.
A lot of defensive backs, and there's going to be some good competition in camp this year. So Patriots only had 4 draft picks, but they got a really nice haul of undrafted free agents. I think that will do it for us for this week's episode of Football Words. Tune in Thursday for Between the Tackles. There will be more draft talk, plenty more this offseason.